Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, page 31, starting from the bottom of 30b. At the bottom, Ella, Omer Rav Papa, Ashida Rav Nachman, Bar Yitzchak Amar, Ayayin, Rav Papa said, Rabbi Chanina's statement was with regard to a chest. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said that it was with regard to wine. The Gemara elaborates. Rav Papa said, and now we're turning to 31a, top of the page. Ashida, it's a chest. The Rabbi Chanina statement with regard to a chest, like a case or like a box. Ashida is not beishamayim nim dedes bifnim ubeishilel oimrim bachutz umoidim elu ve'elu. שאין אויבי הרגליים ואויבי הלוויז בזין נמדד. As we learned in the mission, Kalim 18:1, a wooden chest that is large enough to contain 40 sa'ah is not susceptible to contracting ritual impurity since it is no longer considered a vessel. In determining its capacity, Beis Shammai say that it's measured on the inside, and Beis Hillel say that it's measured on the outside, so that the volume of the walls of the chest itself is included in the measurement, and both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel concede that the volume of the legs and the volume of the rims are not measured. Rav Yossi Omer Modim Sheovi Halaglaim Beovi Halaviz Vizin Nimdad. וביניהן אין נמדד. רבי שמעון שזורי אומר, אם היו רגליים גבוהות טפח, אין ביניהם נמדד, יולד ביניהם נמדד. Rabbi Yossi says they concede that the volume of the legs and the volume of the rims are measured, but the space enclosed between the rims and the legs is not measured. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says if the legs were 1 handbreadth high, then the space between the legs is not measured, since the area has independent significance. But if the space is not 1 handbreadth high, the space between the legs is measured as part of the chest. It is with regard to the statement that Rabbi Chanina said that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Shazuri. Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar, Ayayin, it's none. Rabbi Meir Omer, שמן תחילה לעולם, חכמים אומרים אף הדבש. רבי שמעון שזורי אומר, אף היין מכלל, דתנא, כמה סבר יין לה. אמר רבי שמעון שזורי אומר יין. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said that Rabbi Chanina's statement was with regard to wine, as we learned in the Mishnah in Taharot 3:2. Rabbi Meir says oil, an example of a liquid that contracted impurity, is always considered to have first-degree ritual impurity, even if it came into contact with the item that was impure with second-degree ritual impurity, which, according to the standard halachot of ritual impurity, should result in it having third-degree ritual impurity. And the rabbis say that this is the halacha, even with regard to honey. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says this is the halacha with regard to wine. The Gemara's main inference is that to say that the first Tana holds that wine is not considered liquid, rather says as follows. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says wine is considered a liquid, but oil and honey are not. Tanya Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, Pamachas Yisrael, Yitevel B'chulin. Was Yushal Yisrael Talfon, Amar li, Lech Kach Lecha Min Hashuk, V'aser Alov. The Gemara relates another statement of Rabbi Shimon Shazuri. It is taught in Braita that Rabbi Shimon Shazuri said, once my untithed produce became mixed together with a greater quantity of non-sacred, meaning tithe produce, and I came and asked for a tarful. Now I should separate tithes from the untithed produce that was mixed with the tithe produce. And he said to me, Go and take from the market doubtfully tithed produce, which requires the removal of tithes by rabbinic law, and separate tithes from it on behalf of the untithed produce that is mixed with the tithed produce. Kasava deoiraisa beruba bate virova meoretz masrim hein havele ketoirim mina patu ala patu. The Gemara explains, Rabbi Tarfon holds that by Torah law the minority of untithed produce is nullified in the majority of tithed produce and is therefore exempt from tithes. It is by rabbinic law that it is not nullified and one is obligated to separate tithes from it. And additionally, he holds that the majority of those who are unreliable with regard to tithes, Amei Ha'oretz, do separate tithes, in which case by Torah law, one is not obligated to separate tithes from produce purchased from the market, and therefore, if Rabbi Shimon Shizuri receives produce from Am Ha'aretz, from an Am Ha'aretz, he is considered by Torah law to be separating tithes from exempt produce on behalf of exempt produce, while all of it is obligated in tithes by rabbinic law. ולמה לכך מן הגוי, כוסו אין קניין לגוי. בארץ ישראל להפקיע מיד מעשר, יהבלה מן החיר ולפטור. The Gemara suggests, but let Rabbi Tarfon say to him, go and take produce from a Gentile, since it is exempt from tithes by Torah law, but requires tithing by rabbinic law. He could then separate tithes from this produce on behalf of the untithed produce that is nullified by the tithed produce. The Gemara explains that Rabbi Tarfon holds that a Gentile has no acquisition of the land of an Eretz Yisrael to abrogate the sanctity of the land, thereby removing it from the obligation to tithe its produce, and therefore, if Rabbi Shimon Shizuri were to take produce from a Gentile, he would be considered to be separating tithes from produce that is obligated in tithes by Torah law on behalf of exempt produce, which one may not do. Ikadi Amri אמר לך קח מן הגוי כסובו יש קניין לגוי בארץ ישראל להפקיע מיד מעשר חבלי מן הפטור על הפטור. There are those who say that Rabbi Tarfon said to him, go and take produce from a Gentile and separate tithes from it on behalf of the untithed produce that is intermingled in the majority of tithe produce. Accordingly, Rabbi Tarfon holds that a Gentile has the acquisition of land in Eretz Yisrael to abrogate the sanctity of the land, thereby removing it from the obligation to tithe its produce. And therefore, if Rabbi Shimon Shizuri takes produce from a Gentile, he is considered by Torah law to be separating tithes from exempt produce on behalf of exempt produce, while all of it is obligated in tithes by rabbinic law. The Gemara suggests, but let Rabbi Tarfon say to him, go and take produce from an Am Haaretz in the market and separate tithes from it on behalf of the mixed untithed produce. The Gemara explains Rabbi Tarfon holds that the majority of Amei Haaretz do not separate tithes, in which case it is considered to be separating tithes from produce that is obligated in tithes by Torah law on behalf of exempt produce. Shalach le Rav Yemal. Shalach le Rav Yemal. Bar Shlemya. Shalach le Rav Yemal Bar Shlemya. Le Rav Popo. Hodam Ravim Bar Chinina. Amar Ula Amar Chanina. Haloche K'Rav Shimon Shizuri. ולא עוד, אלא כל מקום ששנה רבי שמעון shizuri halacha kemoisoi, af v'nisorev le tevel bechulin. Rav Yemer bar Shlemya sent the following question to Rav Papa. That which Ravin bar Chanina said, that Ula says, that Rabbi Chanina says, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, and moreover, any place where Rabbi Shimon Shazuri taught a halacha, the halacha is in accordance with his opinion. Was that said even with regard to the case of one whose untied produce became mixed together with non-sacred, meaning tithe produce? Or was Rabbi Chanina referring only to cases where Rabbi Shimon Shazuri stated his opinion in the Mishnah, but not in the Braita? Amar le in Amar Rashi Amar le Mazutra Kashiba Rabbi Chanina Misura Pshita. Rav Papa said to him, yes, the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, even with regard to untied produce that was mixed together with tithe produce. Rashi said, Mar Zutra said to me, Rabbi Chanina of Surah raised a difficulty with this. Isn't it obvious? 31b. Now we're turning the page to 31b. Mika Amar beMishnatenu kol makom sheshana kama. Does Rabbi Chanina say that wherever Rabbi Shimon Shazuri taught a halacha in our Mishnah, the halacha is in accordance with his opinion? Rather, he says that any place where he taught a halacha, the halacha is in accordance with his opinion, and this applies even to Braitot. Okay, we'll stop here, and because we're starting a new idea after this, the next Amud.